Hello and welcome to Gifted Underachievers, a podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. In this segment, James and I talk about where ideas come from, ours and other people's. Hope you enjoy. Hey James.
Yeah, Pat. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Welcome to the clubhouse.
Oh, thank you. Great to be
Get
here.
you a drink.
Pardon?
We're doing mocktails today.
Oh, yay!
Yes, I've got a little mint hibiscus situation working here.
Oh, fantastic. I'm just going to get some gin to put in mine.
All right. Do you want it still or effervescent?
Effervescent, please.
All right. It's
Summer.
bubbling. It's bubbling.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you something though.
Oh.
While you're mixing those mocktails,
Mm-hmm.
just about the nature of creativity, really, what it takes you to be creative. What do you think about that? Not so much where do ideas come from, because they come from all over, but how do you know when something's going to be something or it's just a funny idea?
I don't know because there are times where I'll have an idea and I'll think, oh, this is going to be a great short story.
Yeah.
And it's not. It's just a funny idea.
Yeah.
Right? Or, it's interesting, curious, what have you. And then there's times where I have a small idea and I just start picking away at it. And before I know it, it's like a 2,500 word short story.
Yeah.
And this novel that I'm working on that we've talked about in the past, that came out of a short story.
Cool.
Where I just wanted to write about the tension between these kids and how it feels to be the outsider as a kid.
Yeah.
And it just kept going and going and going and going. So I don't know, I think a lot of it is coming up with an idea and then actually, trying to do something with it.
Yeah. Trying to figure out what form it should be, maybe, and also I suppose the commitment to an idea before you're sure it's actually committable, doable.
Right, right. And yeah, so it's interesting because I've become sort of addicted to Michael Palin's journals, right, which he's released as books. And I think there's like 4 or 5 of these books. And to me, I love reading them. I've started with the first one, which talks about sort of the Monty Python years. And I'm in the one now where he's talking about his travel writing and the shows that he's doing. And I like it because it's it's nice to see somebody whose career worked.
Yeah.
Right? Where one thing led to another. But the other thing is he has the same anxieties and wrestles with the same things and has issues with needing to care for his mom. He's got kids, he has a wife, all these kinds of things. And he still worries about, is this an idea? Is this good? Is this something that's going to work?
Right.
And in the current one that I'm reading, he's written the script for American Friends, which ultimately becomes a movie. And I think the script wins some award. But the movie itself, I'd never heard of it, so it wasn't terribly memorable. But he is pulling his hair out over the script for a period of, I think, maybe 2 years, where he's sending it to friends. Is this any good? And they're saying, well, I like this part, but not this part. And so they don't give up on it.
Yeah.
But then somebody will come back and say, no, I like it. So then he says, maybe there's something here. And it just goes on forever.
Yeah.
As I'm reading it, I'm thinking, if I was his friend, I would say, Michael, set it aside, do something else.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's kind of that danger of being like a dog with a bone.
Yeah.
Where you can't let something go. And you have, what is it, the lost cost fallacy?
Yeah, sunk cost fallacy.
Sunk cost fallacy.
Yeah, it's like you stand in the line up at the bank for, an hour and it's the only line that isn't moving, but you're like, it's going to start moving any day now.
Yeah. Yeah. And you put so much time and effort into something, you can't let it go.
Yeah. Oh,
right.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, I think everybody knows that feeling. And I would have said to him, and maybe as he's going back through his journal, he was like going, oh man, turns red and says, I should have let this go. But yeah, there's that weird sort of metaphysical aspect of this, which is, you've got to be in a space to get the ideas, but then to be able to kind of process them and figure
Yeah. And I wonder, like, so you and I are both writers, and just for anybody who's not familiar with the name Michael Palin, James did mention Monty Python, but Michael Palin is a member of this sort of groundbreaking comedy troupe that came out of England in the
Mhm.
Great Britain, maybe in the what, 1960s,
Yeah,
70s,
late
80s?
60s, early 70s.
Yeah. And so they had a bunch of really popular movies, and they're all pretty effing brilliant. And he's one of them who had I haven't read his journals, but he seems to have had a very rich career and working in whatever area he wanted to turn his attention to. So there's that. What I think too, there's another member of that same comedy troupe named John Cleese. He's been in a bunch of movies too. He's his most famous one might be A Fish Called Wanda. Like that's the
Yep.
next James
Yep.
America.
Michael Palin was in that as well.
Was he?
And
I missed him in
yeah,
that. He probably had a
yeah.
pretty big role. And so I think what they're good at is I read this. John Cleese has a little video out that he gave at some conference in Germany, and it's full of knock knock jokes. Like he just shoots out a knock knock joke every couple minutes in the first one, in the first
Mhm.
few minutes. But it's a really interesting talk about how to get into a creative mindset, and he's got some tips on that. And I think one thing that comedy troupes are pretty good at is getting into a creative mindset, with there's no idea that stinks too much for you to consider
Right.
it. The part where you determine whether that idea is actually worth, say, a skit or a painting or, a movie or a
Mhm.
book or a short story comes after. In order to generate the idea, you have to be in what Cleese calls an open state, where
Mhm.
it's just playful, humor inclined, no urgency to it. So you need to kind of block some time. You need to play with it longer than you want to, the idea. Don't take the first idea that you have and think that's enough.
Mhm.
You have to be confident, and you have to sort of have the privacy to do it in, or at least the space. But you don't evaluate the ideas in that period. You
Mhm.
evaluate them later, and then you say, well, what I found myself is my natural instinct is to try and write a novel about stuff if I think it's a good idea. And
Mhm.
some ideas are not novel worthy. They might need to be a course or, a nonfiction essay or a narrative nonfiction essay or a thing,
Yeah.
just a blog post. Like, so
Tossed aside, you
yeah,
know?
tossed aside, like I tried to write a novel once on that explored sibling estrangement, and I wanted to bring in the severed feet that washed ashore in the Pacific Northwest and for several years, and everybody was
Really?
curious. Oh, feet were washing up on shore in the runners, still in the running shoes.
Really?
People were finding them and calling the cops. And of course,
Wow.
then the hearse would come, and all you've got is a shoe, so you put it in the back of the hearse. Then try. No, I'm joking. But it
You-
was a very big mystery up here.
Yeah, there a mystery was afoot.
Yeah, I know. We were knee deep in confusion on that one. Anyway, I tried to write a novel bringing in the severed feet and really exploring sibling estrangement and and addiction and other things, And I was just struggling with it. I wrote like 5 drafts, and then I was finally like, wait a minute, is this a novel? Maybe
Yeah.
this is just an essay that I need to explore this idea. Maybe the feet are a different novel. I might have been trying to jam two ideas together that didn't belong. Um,
Yeah.
so I had a hook with the foot, and then the idea is that this guy, he hasn't talked to his brother for a long time, and then he's like, is that his foot? And the reason he's even wondering is because the foot is unusually large. His brother had size 15 feet.
Uh-huh. Yeah, see,
So it made me laugh
really
too.
good,
I
right?
mean, it was high concept, but I have this tendency to fuck up high concept ideas and make them very low concept, It just didn't work. But anyway, the point is that had I spent more time in I had the idea, I loved the idea. So I had that open phase that Cleese talks about. And then I went to execute the idea, and that is the closed phase. It's when solutions and you're implementing the whole idea, right? And so it's characterized by action, purpose, and maybe some tension. I don't think I spent long enough in that post idea phase on deciding, is this a novel? Is it? Can it be? Is it
Uh-huh.
maybe not meant to be what my natural bent is to turn it
Right.
into? This is like everyone you date can't be a long-term relationship, you know? Every time you have sex, you're not going to have a child. So, well, anyway.
Well,
Most of the time.
most of the time.
Yeah, depending.
Yeah.
So what do you think? That's I don't know where I'm going with that.
No, I think that's all really, really good. And there was a couple of things. One, when you come up with an idea that captures you, it's usually because there's that hook
Yeah,
element to it,
yeah.
right? And so you get kind of excited about it. And the problem is like, a hook isn't necessarily great,
Yes.
right? Because there needs to be more depth behind it, right? So and I started to write it. This idea, I was going to call it the sixth sense.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
And the idea was is this person, and I couldn't figure out how to, it fell apart once I started to try and execute on it. But the idea is the person is walking around, and every time they bump into somebody, that person's kink or entire sort of sexual self
Ooh,
implants in their brain,
okay then.
right? So that they all of a sudden are like
Jesus.
inside that person's sexual being, right? So
That's kind
sex
of great.
things, right?
I think that could be
Yeah,
fun.
it's got a good hook. And I
Yeah.
started to think about it. I was like, oh man, she like bumps in. And then I was like, you can develop the story where she bumps into somebody who's criminal,
Ooh, yeah.
right? But, how do you go to the police and say, hey, this person over here is, a serial rapist or something like that? And they
Yeah,
go,
yeah,
no, well,
yeah,
I have this ability,
yeah.
right? So I was thinking about it, but then I started getting into like, how did this person develop this thing? And, everything. And then all of a sudden, everything started feeling really cliche,
Yeah.
trite. And it just was like to get to the hook, I don't know, it just fell apart. And
But
it,
and
and
you
I
were thinking of it as a short story or something longer?
Well, I started thinking of it as a short story, and then I was like, wow, maybe this could be like a movie script or, something
Yeah.
like that. But then I started it as a short story, and I started it more times than I can count, and I
Mm,
just couldn't get it to develop.
yeah.
And maybe another writer would come along and take the idea and be able to, really make it happen. But yeah, no, it fell apart. Once
Yeah.
the light of day
Yeah.
started to fall apart. And the other thing that got me thinking about with John Cleese, from reading Michael Palin's journal, he describes their process, which they would each have, writing, they would do their own writing, but they also each kind of had a writing partner and they would trade
Mm.
off sometimes. But John Cleese often wrote with Graham Chapman.
Chapman, yeah. Yeah.
And Michael Palin often wrote with Terry Jones, and then I think Terry Gilliam and Eric Idle would kind of get into the mix kind of thing. But
Mhm.
they would come up with an idea, they'd go to their writing partner, they'd hash it out. Is this a good idea? They'd bring it to the group where they'd have these group meetings.
Yeah.
And, Palin would write, oh, I was so excited because everybody liked my ideas, or
Right.
everybody liked, Terry Jones and my ideas, right?
Yeah.
And so they had that moment where they were forced to bring the idea into the light
Mm.
of day, and it
Yeah.
had to have done some writing to be able to present it.
Yeah, that's
Um,
good. I love that.
and so that got me thinking maybe writers groups or creative groups in general shouldn't be about here's the work, what do you think? It should be here's the idea, what do you think? Right?
Oh, that's interesting.
And
Yeah.
so you're constantly bringing, and it can be like, if you're a short story writer, you could go to this group, once a month or week or whatever it is, and say, here's my idea for a short story. And people could be like, I don't know. Or if you're writing a novel, here's my idea for the next chapter. So it's more about bringing ideas as opposed to actually, hey, people, I want you to read 20 pages of text and let's talk, which really
Yeah.
or it feels like running into a brick wall.
Well,
Maybe more process oriented.
I'm just wondering if among the creative pursuits there I think writers tend to hold their ideas pretty close to their chests because they
Mhm.
want to be the one who does it. They don't want somebody else walking
Mhm.
out of a meeting once a month and taking their idea. Um,
Yeah.
but if you look at actors, I would imagine almost always are workshopping playwrights. Oh,
Mhm.
does this have legs? Will it work in this form? Can we add something to make it more workable so there's more collaborative arts than others? I
Mhm.
wonder about painting seems like one of those things where it's an idea and it's also a specific visual image, maybe. I'm not sure how
Mhm.
painters work actually, but I think even abstract, I would imagine you get a visual sense of where on the canvas you want that thing to go. Uh,
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
to start anyway. So and then it sort of makes itself in some ways. Maybe I'm sounding like a total romantic though. I don't know. But I just wonder if it's because I know that if I walked into a meeting and said, here's my idea, and somebody looked shady and then suddenly had to go to the bathroom to write it down in their notebook, I'd be like, I'd be after them with a knife.
Yeah, well, and that's why your writing group would be a very bloody affair.
Blood on the cheese. Yeah, because we'd have cheese at meetings and there'd be
Yeah.
blood spattered walls.
The only time I've ever had anybody like out and out steal was related to a movie.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, and so those folks, I think they can be pretty cutthroat.
Yeah.
But I don't have trouble sharing ideas and those kinds of things because I'm the owner of the whole theory
Right.
behind it.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
I getcha.
if and nothing, it's not like you're gonna come up with some idea that's never been done.
No, exactly. You're right.
Everything
And,
has been done.
it's
And
like
so
even Darwin and that other guy had the same idea at the same time. It's all in
yeah.
the execution. It has nothing to do with the idea.
Yeah. So yeah, there's the George Carlin line that, the guy who invented the flamethrower was one day he said, God damn it, I want to set that person on fire. It wasn't him, it was the guy next to him who was good with tools. But I don't have trouble sharing ideas. And I think that part of this is being really good at coming up with ideas, which that Cleese bit about the
No, he
term.
calls it the open state, open mode, where you enjoy
Yeah.
curiosity for its own sake and to create it, to get into it, you create certain conditions. And I named some of them. Actually, some of them are incredibly practical. Delineate a start time and an end time before you even start. Get yourself some space. You can be with somebody else, of course. Give yourself time to ride out the discomfort, tolerate the anxiety.
Hmm.
Like he's actually saying what I've been feeling about writing myself is that sometimes it comes with sort of anxiety, especially when I'm super busy. Like, am I going to be able to get anything done in this little short period that I have with all the shit that's on my mind right now? So he's talking about that. He's talking about not taking the first idea, play with it longer, and being confident. Any drivel may lead to a breakthrough. So letting yourself just produce
Yeah.
drivel. So anyway, he's calling it open mode, and it's the more time you spend in open mode, you do need both open and closed modes. Close the more evaluative, executive
Yeah.
sort of state, but you need both. But they start with you in open mode. All creative projects, you have to have
Yeah.
that period of time where you're just fooling around.
Yeah. Jotting down, you have your hook. Okay. This is really interesting. There's a hook here. Let me jot some ideas down. Like, where is
Yeah,
this going to go, actually?
yeah,
Right? How is this going to work? How am I going to bring the reader into this person's life? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? I mean, I come back to, and I think we talk about this quite a bit, is that ability to have maybe network is too broad of a term, but maybe it's like a creative partner where
yeah,
you are in that open mode on your own, but part of the execute is just going to somebody and saying, "Hey, does this sound like a good idea?"
yeah. I think so because I mean that's why people hire writing coaches and stuff. It's because
Mhm.
if you go half cocked with an open mode idea and you haven't done that sort of evaluative thinking that you would do in closed mode, I mean, we don't have to use these terms, but whatever, afterwards, if you haven't thought about it like, okay, well, what does this thing want to be? It's going to be a lot easier to describe your idea to somebody else and just say, Does that sound like a novel to you? Does that sound like an essay? What do
Yeah.
you think? And you don't have to take their advice. You're just
No.
asking to hear
Yeah.
yourself talk and explain it. And then, well, with writing coaches in particular, you need a certain number of complications in any novel. So sometimes just having one idea as the central storyline works only if you can complicate it in a meaningful way
Hmm.
to make it one rich, huge experience that all kind of has the
Hmm.
same underpinnings thematically. Um,
Yeah.
and if your idea is too thin for that, it will come through. Or if you're sort of inventing building the plane as you're flying it, that will come through because you're leaving too much up to chance. You're not
Yeah.
allowing yourself that farming of the idea sufficiently.
Yeah. Boy, absolutely. And there's been a lot of times where I've started out down a road
Yeah,
and thinking this is going to work.
yeah,
And then getting to that place where it's like, nope, nope, nope,
yeah,
nope, nope.
yeah.
It's just not happening.
Yeah. And for me, persistence is practically my middle name. Like I will persist with something beyond all reason. And so my task, I guess, is to let stuff go and say, well, it was a great idea, but it doesn't go any, it doesn't need what it needs to have
Mhm.
in order for me to work on it. It's not so much just to be a product because you don't want to do that prematurely either. It's to just work on it. You can't work on a one-legged wait a minute, I'm going to say something objectionable. Uh, a car with one tire is not going to go anywhere. There's no point. You got to
Yeah.
make sure it's got enough tires before you get in and start driving it.
Okay. So here's a question, right? He talks about going into this very sort of planned, structured open mode where you're unstructured, right? And
Well,
structured in that, you have a start time and you
oh
know
yeah,
how,
yeah. Yeah, the container is structured.
yeah, the
Yeah.
container is structured. But I gotta think he brings something into it.
I
So
think so.
here's a question for you: is when you really think about it, where do ideas come from? Are they intentional, where you say, I need to now come up with an idea?
No,
Is it
not for
more
me.
you have little scraps and pieces that either literal scraps and pieces you've written down or just little thoughts in your head and you need that open space or open mode time to give them a little bit more air to breathe?
That's a pretty good question. I think for me, they often start with an image.
Yeah.
Yeah, just an image, something that makes me curious. It can be like a little girl playing the piano on a cruise ship or something, like just a
Wow.
very strange image. And then I go from there, and I don't know why I start with an image like that. It's got a feeling to it even, and like sort of a poignant feeling for that one. And then from there, I have to be able to turn it around and I have lots of images. Like I'm a very, sort of imagey
Mm.
person, but only some of them stick. I have a tendency to go immediately to that's got to be in a novel, but it really doesn't. I mean, what if it's a poem?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah,
what,
because that's your mode,
yeah. What if,
right?
yeah, my mode is novel. I'm a longer writer, and what if the sixth sense is a poem,
Yeah.
not a movie, not a
I
story?
don't know. It feels like you got to get into I mean, so part of what got me interested in that was you could use a lot of humor, right? You could have a very serious story, but there can be a lot of humor to it, right? So I was thinking, again, like an image, right?
Yeah,
So this main character protagonist has bumped into somebody who's got criminality as part of their
yeah,
thing, right? And so she can't go or he can't go to the police. Maybe then this is like, you're the triggering moment here, the inciting incident where they'd say, okay, well, I'm gonna follow this person. Or,
mm,
and somehow they get this bad guy in their sights, which puts them in the bad guy's sights,
yeah, yeah.
right? And so I had like this image in my head of this chase scene where the bad guy's chasing the protagonist and the protagonist keeps bumping into people and having these huge sexual fantasies play
Oh my
out
God, that's funny. I
while
think
they're
it's
trying to
funny.
escape, right?
Yeah,
And so there was all these ideas, but there's no why there.
yeah,
I just it
yeah.
just never felt like there was a why and a reason and a rhyme to it.
I get you. I get you. There needs to be a trajectory of some kind, and not just the open and shut. Oh, it could be an Ellery Queen mystery magazine story if that's what it
Yeah.
is, you know. Okay, so two questions. Well, one is just a comment on that. You know, my tendency, and this is why I fuck up with novels all the time, is to say, why don't I just make her a one-legged person so it's more interest? But that doesn't give you a why either. Gives you more to write. But my question for you is that how your ideas usually come? Like with a kind of an image like that?
Yeah, for me it's almost the exact same thing as what you were just describing, right? It's an image and a sensation, a feeling.
Yeah.
And I think, I can use this to evoke this feeling in the person who's reading it. But
Yeah.
really, I think I can evoke this feeling in myself.
Yeah, that's what yeah, I believe that too.
So,
Yeah.
so the current long form thing that I'm working on, Trundle is really all about evoking a feeling inside me,
Yeah, that's cool.
right? And so hopefully somebody else likes it. I think, there's something about Cleese and Palin where they had a little bit of a privilege that they had earned, where they had, the time and the space, but also the necessity to come up with
Mm.
new ideas because you've got to feed this thing that they were doing. But for me, yeah, it's an image, it's a sensation, and then just slowly does it leave my head?
Hmm.
But I'm curious, so you're working on this longer piece with Frankenstein,
Yeah.
and that has to have come from somewhere, and your way about it is, really unique and taking it further, and it's so much deeper than just a hook, is what it
Well,
feels.
that's thanks only to the grant experiment that we've been doing because I had to articulate what it would be about and I hadn't thought it through. I was going to do my usual what I call plantsing, which is so there's pantsers and then there's plotters. And
Yeah.
I tend to be more of a pantser, like sit down and just write whatever comes into my head.
Ah.
But then I try to plot after the fact and nothing fits because I haven't thought about it. So now I do this plantsing thing where I'll write down whatever comes into my head for maybe a chapter and then I'll put it aside. I'll think about the overall story. What's the next story goal, blah, 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 and then go back into so back and forth kind of, try to think about
Mm.
what's the concept, what's the premise, all that stuff. But that also gets me in trouble because I don't really know, I don't have a good evaluative sense for whether an idea works until I
Right.
fucking do it, right? I just need to do it. I think the thing I find that I need to pay a little bit more attention to is yes, you must believe that you can do it. You must have the confidence that Cleese mentions.
Hmm.
I think of it more as belief that nothing is wrong when you're being creative. Nothing is absolutely wrong. It's that you need that time also to sort of even individually workshop it with yourself, or with the books that already exist in the world, or for
Hmm.
probably for visual artists. What's the other art out there? What is it doing? How does my idea relate to that stuff? You don't
Wow.
want to overthink it, but it might be a good way to, if you don't have a collaborator to bounce ideas off, to look at what's out there in the world in your sphere and go, how does my idea bounce off those? Like,
Mm.
is there any traction in whatever way you want to think of that? And so I got a lot out of trying to figure out, which this grant I applied for forced me to do,
Mhm.
to figure out how my idea makes sense in the world, how it relates to more than just, oh, I have a funny idea.
No, I think that there's this sort of self accountability,
Hmm.
right?
Good
And
one.
maybe
I like
that
that.
little bit of privilege I'm thinking of with, Cleese and Palin is they had this thing that was holding them accountable.
Yeah, I don't consider, privilege to me is unearned. So I feel like that unearned privilege means is actually something else. But I can't think of a word for it. I mean, I could be wrong, but you're right. I think they have this, this requirement to be accountable to the bosses at the BBC who were funding their stuff, Channel 4, I think. to come up with shit all the time, just like Saturday
Yeah.
Night Live has this accountability to that dude who founded it, Lorne Michaels, and to the
Yeah.
network to come up with shit. And so they
Yeah.
have to be able to put aside the product, what's the end going to look like, and just be able to play with the ideas until they make sense and
Mhm.
work as something. And I think that's the part I often skimp on, is playing with the ideas long enough that to me they make sense and they work as something before I start trying to execute them into,
Mhm.
say, a novel or whatever. That's the part I think I need to pay more attention to. And realizing that I can use other stuff in the world. I don't need to bounce the idea off somebody. I really trust my own artistic
Mhm.
um, sort of vision. I just feel like, who's going to know it if I don't know it, you know?
Mhm.
But that I need to take a little bit longer over
Yeah.
that part of the thing.
Yeah, well, I think in the context of Monty Python or Saturday Night Live,
Mhm.
you are accountable to the other people. So what you do is part of like that team effort.
Yeah.
And what we do is you're the person who's going to have to sit down for the next year and write it out,
Yeah.
right? So you
Yeah.
got to, it has to be up to you. But we keep coming to these collaborative contexts.
Yeah, we do. That's weird, eh?
And yeah, and so it feels like maybe there's a role for some form of collaboration. And
Yeah.
you talked about with this other idea going out, what is the other art doing?
Hmm.
Right? There is that role for some form of collaboration to be
Yeah.
part of the ideation process. And it's not like you sit down with somebody, what should I write next? And then you
No.
go back and forth, but
Yeah. Yeah.
exploring.
I think
Yeah.
it's great. I think that we've arrived at something. I have no idea what it is.
Well, I like my idea, because you could have a creatives group where, it doesn't have to be writers. It could be at all forms.
Yeah.
Just saying, does this sound like a good idea? And maybe it's not, does this sound like a good idea, but you
Yeah.
just present the idea because, in the end, everybody could hate it. You say, everybody hated it. I'm gonna go do it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I like the idea of not saying, does this sound like a good idea? Because then people want to please you. They're like, sure, yeah, it sounds okay. Depends on how you do it. But I think that some people will get it, some people won't. It doesn't really matter. I think what you're trying to kind of arrive at, maybe, if you do that kind of thing, is how does it fly in the world? What is the look on people's faces when you
Yeah.
mention it? Like that kind of stuff. It's like a
Well,
pitch fest at a conference.
yeah, well, and since that emotional component is so important to the ideas that we come up with, maybe the question is something around like, how does this make you feel?
That's a good one. And maybe it's, what parts of this idea make you curious?
Yeah, the larger point is that you can form a group that's maybe more productive where you're talking about thoughts and ideas as opposed to here, read this. What do you
Yeah,
think?
I agree with that part.
All right.
Thank you very much. What will change? We don't know.
We'll keep plugging away at it though.
Thanks so much for listening to Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. We would love to hear how we're doing, so please leave a comment, join our chat page, or send us an email to giftedunderachievers@substack.com. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Hope you have a great creative week.